Welcome to the Lipoedema podcast, hosted by Shell and Tiana. Our aim is to make noise around lipedema and educate as many people as we can about this disease.
Our guest list contains professionals who work in the field and women who live with lipedema. Thank you for joining us. Happily married to a lovely Scotsman and trying to raise a teenage boy whilst navigating the ever-changing world of lipedema in a post-menopausal body, Jedda Hindmarsh is now officially middle-aged, and despite experiencing symptoms since the age of 12, she was only diagnosed in early 2021. Currently, Jedda is trying to do whatever she can to limit the progress of the growths, which are now present in all 4 limbs, as surgery is not an option. Where possible, she also tries to speak to others about lipedema in the hope of spreading the word and helping others to find answers to their struggles. Career-wise, Jedda has had many jobs, from receptionist to call centre operator, EFL teacher to adult literacy and numeracy trainer. She now runs her own business, which used to be a bricks and mortar store, but due to the physical challenges of lipedema is now online only, so that she can be home based and not punish her legs by standing all day.
Welcome back to the Lipoedema podcast. We are your hosts, Shell
and Tiana, and today we are joined by Jedda Hindmarsh. Jedda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. It's lovely to meet you.
Jedda, we are going to get right into it. And first, I want to know, how did you come to learn about lipedema?
It was about 2.5, 3 years ago, and it was actually somebody I had met within the previous year or so, and gotten to know, and only when she felt comfortable did she bring it up, because she had been diagnosed, it came on with her with menopause, and her mum actually had it. So when she felt that she knew me well enough, and she'd heard me complain about pain and bruising and things like that, she said, "Oh, have you ever heard of this?" And she wrote it down for me, and I researched, and here we are.
Wow, good on her for feeling safe enough to say that to you, and knowing that you would take that on, and because we've spoken about that before, how do we broach the subject?
Exactly.
Yeah, so for her to be able to do that for you, that is awesome. So you said that was 3 years ago?
Yeah, so I met her mid-2019, and we spoke about it probably, it must have been late 20, early 21, I would say. Yeah, around that time. Just, because there wasn't enough in the world happening.
Yeah, that's right. And so did you get a formal diagnosis?
Yes, I eventually tracked down one GP. This is the joy of living in a regional area. There was one GP between the whole of Melbourne and Sydney. Thankfully, she happened to be in Albury, but she's at a private clinic. So, again, you pay. As soon as you walk through the door, you pay. But she was absolutely wonderful. I booked a double appointment, which obviously cost more, but it was great. She went through everything. She was very understanding. It was so nice to just walk in and go, "I think I have this. What do you think?" Gave her a brief history, and she goes, "Yes." And to understand was awesome.
Yeah,
to not have to explain it.
Having someone that understands and has heard of it before, that is the best thing ever. So you mentioned that you had pain in your legs and you'd complained to this friend about it. So had you been searching for answers for this leg pain and any other ailments you were feeling?
No, looking back now, I have had symptoms since puberty, since probably about 12 or 13, but you get into this mindset that, oh, it's just because you're fat, it's just because you're unfit, it's just because you're lazy, it's all your fault. And you get into that mindset, and it's very, very hard. So I didn't go looking for answers because I thought it was me. If I just got fitter, if I just lost a little bit more weight, if I just did this, everything would be better. But obviously, no.
But it's hard, because when you go to most doctors, that's what they say. Eat less, move more. And we know that with lippy fat, that's not the way to get rid of it. We've really got to look at ourselves holistically. And so, that can be super hard.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
So you believe that it started to develop in puberty?
Definitely. Absolutely. The first thing I remember is clothes not fitting properly. Like, as a 12, 13, 14-year-old trying to find shorts, I could never, ever fit into shorts or skirts or anything like that. So it all started with the thighs, and clothes shopping was a nightmare and has been ever since, and just, progressed from there. So they would be my earliest symptoms that I can recall. And then, of course, you get the bruising, disproportionate thighs, etc., etc. And looking back now, I never had the same energy as my friends. And I thought maybe it's because I don't eat enough red meat. At the time, I was able to eat red meat. Maybe I need more iron, maybe this, maybe that. Always looking for some other reason, something that I was doing wrong, basically.
Yeah, that's it. Because if you're not getting any other answers, we just blame ourselves. And so when
Mm-hmm.
you got that diagnosis, how did you feel?
The first emotion was relief, sheer and utter relief that there was a thing, that there was a reason, and it wasn't just me. I mean, since then, emotional roller coaster, ups, downs, and everywhere in between. But the first initial one was absolute sheer relief that there was a thing. There was a reason.
Yeah, and it's almost empowering, isn't it? It's like, oh my goodness,
Oh,
I know what I'm working towards now. I know that I have this thing, and there are things I can do to minimize this pain and to, alleviate some of this stress that I'm feeling, thinking that it was all me.
It's all me, yeah. But also with the empowering, so for example, I've been at a work do for the last 3 days, and whereas before I would either mask my symptoms or play them down or hide them or just not tell anybody, now I just call it as it is. I say, sorry guys, I have to sit down. I cannot stand for this long. Really sorry guys, I have to move. Really sorry, I can't walk that fast when I first get up from sitting. It takes me about 5 steps. I'm sorry, I look like a penguin for the first 5 steps. But whereas before I would have, masked, hidden, come up with excuses, really tried not to let anybody know that I was in pain or that something was wrong, or basically. So being able to share that with my closest colleagues and my inner circle has been phenomenal, and they are so understanding, basically. So that is huge. Not hiding anymore is massive.
Breaking that stigma, thinking that it's not me anymore. There is something wrong with me. So, hey, these are my limitations. That is so powerful. So powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I want to go, sorry, I'm just going to go back a little bit to when you were talking about finding clothes when you were in puberty. So I've always been a big girl, and I grew up in the 80s, and there were no plus size shops in the 80s. So it was terrible being a teenager in the 80s and not being able to fit into bubblegum jeans of all things.
Yes. And the leggings with the stirrups.
Stirrup leggings. Yes. Oh my
goodness. And rah-rah skirts. Having to get your best friend's mum to make you a rah-rah skirt so that you could go to the high school disco.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then getting embarrassed by the amount of material she had to buy.
Yes. I remember my mum having to make me my costumes for dances and things because they were never in the right size. So it was just a whole different ball game back in the 80s before all these we were able to get plus size clothing and more generous sizes. So I think
comfortable
we've come
clothing.
a long way. Yeah. And stretch is a lot better these days.
Oh yes. But also, like, I've struggled because my thighs were so disproportionate. I have a waist. I'm weird. I have a waist. So of course you get something that's size 18 to get you around the thighs, and then you can go like crazy the waist. Oh my god, I've got a size 10 waist.
Yeah, like a 10-centimeter dart in the back just to try to bring it all together.
Oh, belts were my friend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So are there any other points along the timeline that it's progressed or that it's changed in any way, Jedda?
I think it's just been a slow and steady progression. And I do wonder, like, obviously through your 20s, you're on the pill. Did that have an impact? Because I didn't know. I've only had one pregnancy, so I don't know, if that impacted. It's just been a slow and steady progression, especially with the thighs. But now I can see it in all four limbs. And like after I had my son, I remember looking at my lower legs, and there was this weird lumpy thing on my lower leg, just under my knee, and I thought, oh, must have put on a bit of weight. Well, I'll need to get that off. But of course, it's never shifted, and now I know why. It just sort of appeared from nowhere. So yeah, gentle, slow progression over 30.
Okay, that's really interesting, because if you're saying that it started as early as puberty for you, when you noticed that disproportion in your body already, at the age of 12, with the tiny waist and trying to get the pants over your thighs, I'm the same. I have that same disproportion. Buying clothes is quite challenging. And to have that slow progression that may not intertwine with hormonal fluctuations can be quite confusing, because it's slow and steady. There's not one thing that triggers it. And what we're knowing from lipedema is that it's supposed to progress with those big hormonal fluctuations. But again, you're an example of the fact that that's not always the case. Sometimes there is no direct point.
Yeah, it may have altered, but because I wasn't aware, I wasn't looking for it. Like if I had known in my teenage years, I could have monitored, did going on the pill make a difference? Did having a child have a difference? But because I didn't know, I wasn't looking for those differences. The only hormonal difference I've experienced since I've known about it is menopause. So that's the only hormonal change I've had since knowing about lipedema. And let's just say that they weren't good friends. Menopause and lipedema are not good friends. I've definitely noticed a difference in the last 12 months with menopause.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my questions of interest to you, in how you noticed progress at a time when you went through menopause, because it's quite a lengthy process, unfortunately. Menopause, for, I said, 12 months, it could be longer for some people. So talk us through that, or what did you notice?
Definitely weight gain, and finding it, especially my legs in particular, but also finding it harder to maintain the healthy eating because of the hormonal mood swings. Like if you have days where the hormones are just raging, to try and sit down to yet another salad, it's just not happening. Pass me the chocolate sort of thing. So it was really, really hard to maintain the healthy diet. And if your rough day coincides with very poor weather, the last thing you want to do is go for a walk around the block, no matter how gentle. If it's absolutely blowing a gale outside, I'm not walking around the block. I'm sorry. I'll sit here on my compression pump a little bit longer. So yeah, and then of course that then takes a toll mentally. Then you beat yourself up about it because you haven't done those good things. So yeah, then you've got to dig yourself back out of there, which is sometimes easier than others, depending on the day.
Agreed, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now you just created the most perfect segue to our next question, because you mentioned the compression pump. So I'm very keen to know what kind of management strategies you use for your lipedema. Can you talk us through those?
Well, obviously diet, and that is an absolute roller coaster for me. I have good days, I have bad days. I've stopped beating myself up over the bad days, because I went through initially probably 6 months of being really, really, really good. And yes, I did lose some of the lifestyle fat, which was fantastic. But then I noticed there was no joy in my life anymore, because I was so restricted in what I was eating. And I just thought, what is the point? If I am so miserable, what is the point of being here? So I cut myself a little bit of slack. And I thought, you know what? I'm not perfect, but I'm going to enjoy what I've got left. basically. So that diet is definitely the first one, and gentle exercise. I had thought about a compression pump, but didn't really know much about it. And it wasn't till I was hospitalised for surgery, non-lipedema surgery. And of course, they couldn't put the stockings on. Because I said to the girl, first off, you're going to need to go and get the largest size you have in the hospital. And she looked at me and said, please. So she went and got the largest size she could find. Naturally, didn't get more than 2 inches over my ankle. And I said, please take it off. It really hurts. Like, she didn't even get a chance to roll it up. I said, this really, really hurts. I need you to take it off now. So they ended up having to put a heated compression pump on, like a Velcro thing from the knee to the ankle. That's all they could do before I went in, during and after the surgery. And as soon as they put it on, I'm laying there and it was like a heated massage. I'm thinking, oh, this is wonderful. And that convinced me that I needed to buy a compression pump. It felt so good. So, of course, as soon as I got out of the hospital, I said to my husband, I need to have one of these things and I need it now. So I did the 3 months rent before you buy thing with MediRent, and I got an LX9, which I love. If I knew then what I know now, I would have got the full, what I call the deep sea diver suit, the one that goes all the way up. If I'd known more about them then, I would have got that one, definitely.
Gotcha.
And
I'm keenly looking in the market for compression pumps. But yeah, that's interesting that you say that if you knew what you know now, to get the full body one. As you said, your lipedema is present in both your legs and your arms, so that I could imagine that would be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, well, I've got two leg sleeves, but they go sort of 7/8 of the way up the thigh. And I've got an arm sleeve as well, so I can do both arms. But of course, the very, very tops of the thighs, the buttocks, the abdominal area, that all gets to be missed out. And I haven't spent enough time with medical practitioners to know if it definitely is in my buttocks area, but I wouldn't be surprised, put it that way. Given the appearance and the feel, it's probably there too.
Right. Now, you've spoken a little bit about, trying to get your diet right, and to that balancing point where you still enjoy your life and feel that you're enjoying your life, but also sort of supporting your, anti-inflammatory lymphatic system and your lipedema. If you can indulge us a little bit in what a really great day on a plate looks like for you, that you enjoy what you're eating. Is there one particular meal that you really enjoy that you know is nourishing for your body?
A recipe that I found from the Fast 800 series for a veggie pie, and obviously it's a pie, but it doesn't have dough or crust or anything. Their crust is cauliflower, and I really, really like that. It's full of vegetables and it's full of nutrients, and you actually get, for your calories, you get a really big serve, really big portion. So you feel full afterwards and you feel happy, and that's absolutely one of my favorites. And during the winter, it is an absolute fave. I love it to bits. Luckily, I like omelets and things like that. And my Sunday morning treat was eggs, 1 piece of bacon, eggs, tomato, spinach, mushroom, capsicum, and that's my big fry up as a Sunday morning treat. Yeah, I guess I've learnt to minimise the dairy. I haven't gone fully dairy free. I do like a little bit of cheese on my homemade pizza. But like I said, I don't have as much. It's damage limitation, shall we say. So I don't eat chocolate like I used to. I'll have one small piece of dark chocolate, and I'm happy and I'm good and I don't need the rest. Rather than, I can't have any chocolate at all, sort of thing. So yeah, damage limitation.
Yeah, interesting, because my mindset, if I think, I can't have any chocolate, then I black out and end up having like 2 empty packets of chocolate right next to me, and it's finding that, giving yourself permission to do something and enjoy something.
Yeah.
End up just having a little bit and going, oh yeah, that was really delicious.
Yeah.
But you're having a pie. That pie sounds really good. And I noticed you said that recipe came from the Fast 800. Do you have anything
Yes.
like intermittent fasting or something like that?
Yeah, so they are big believers in intermittent fasting. Depending on your lifestyle, it can be really good. But some lifestyles just can't do that because if you're on shift work or your lifestyle just doesn't support that way of eating, it is hard. It is really hard. And I don't know that I could sustain that long term. 4 months and I was over it. Yeah. I was ready to eat again, thanks.
Okay. Right, the short-term fix.
Short-term fix, it was good. Got rid of some lifestyle fat. But yeah, long term, I couldn't sustain it.
Good.
I needed to have there needs to be some joy in life.
I agree with you. Yeah, and we all have to find that balance, don't we?
Absolutely.
So you were talking about when you first had a compression pump put on you in hospital, and you thought it felt beautiful and like a massage. I'd love to know what, if any, other treatments that you do feel like they're really relieving your symptoms of lipedema.
To be honest, I haven't really tried a lot of other things, and it's purely finances and lack of resources outside capital cities. So I live 3 hours plus from Melbourne and 6 hours from Sydney. So access to specialists just isn't happening. You know, it's a big deal. So I can't afford to pop down to the clinic in Melbourne whenever I feel like it, because not only you've got the cost of the appointment, it's the travelling to get there, it's the accommodation because you're not going to go down and back in one day, etc., etc. So there's all that financial upheaval as well. So I haven't accessed specialists and other treatments. It's mostly been me researching and looking at what I can get locally. On wearing compression, it's the compression garments from Aldi. I haven't gone down the route of getting one fit and things like that. If the money was there, yes, I would. If it was subsidised, yes, I would. As much as I would love to have the surgery, it's just financially not an option for us, basically. So, yeah, what I have done is all based on research through Lipoedema Australia, the Facebook support group, things like that. What are other people doing? What can I do that's not going to break the bank, that might have an impact? So yeah, at the moment it's been garments and compression pump.
That's such a good point that you make, Jedda, that there are so many women out there like yourself that aren't privileged with living in a metropolitan area and having access to all of those resources at, 5 minutes drive from home. And you really do have to be very resourceful, and you have to have that self-determination to try and access the things that you can, and it is more expensive for you. It's a longer drive to get where you need to go to find a specialist, more expensive mail to get things delivered to you. All of those costs add up. And how's the community? Is there a community, albeit small, of lipedema ladies that you collaborate with in your area, or not really?
Not that I know of. So I know of obviously the lady who spoke to me first of all. And since then, I took my son to a friend's place, and it was a roommate in that house. And we got talking, and I couldn't help but look at her legs. I said, look, and I felt that comfortable that I could speak to her. I said, look, please don't take this the wrong way. I said, but have you ever heard of lipedema? No, what's that? So I said, look, in my uneducated opinion, I said, see that bit around your ankle there? And she said, yeah. And I said, that's lymphedema. I said, see that bit near your knee? And she goes, yeah. I said, that's lipedema. You need to go and get diagnosed. And she called me 2 weeks later in tears going, oh my God, you were right. And she was so happy. Yeah, and you could just tell just by the swelling around her ankle and the growth around her knee. I knew straight away what it was because I'd looked at all the research papers on Lipoedema Australia. I'd seen all the photos and things like that. I said, look, it's my uneducated opinion, I think you should go and get diagnosed. I think you have the double whammy. And she does. And so she was so thankful.
That is amazing.
And another thing that surprised me, so one other person I know that has it, was a complete shock to me, is actually my insurance agent for my business. And so I was explaining why I had to change the structure of my business and what I was doing because I couldn't be on my feet anymore. I was explaining to her my symptoms, thinking that it was just a conversation. And then, of course, a couple of months later, when I had to hook up with her again, she said, "Oh, you're not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" She goes, "I went and got diagnosed." And I'm like, "Excuse me, what?" Yeah, so she had experienced symptoms for the last couple of years, and she was a similar age to me. And she said, "I was listening to what you were saying." And she went and spoke to her doctor about it and got diagnosed. So, yeah, that was phenomenal. So that's about the extent of my support system. My close friends locally all know, and they're very thoughtful. Like they'll say, one friend in particular, before we do anything, she says, "What's your pain level today? What can you cope with today? You know, how much can we get done today?" sort of thing. And I know that comes from a place of love and support. So I'm very lucky in that respect. And my husband is phenomenal. I wouldn't be here without him. So
that's so amazing. Look, when we really give people the benefit of the doubt and be transparent with people about what's going on with us, often we are met with love and support rather than the opposite. I think it's so transparent in the world, especially these days, and be vulnerable to that. And also incredibly courageous to call with love and support, call symptoms out to other people, because you're actually educating in your small community, and you've made a difference to two people directly just by being open. That's massive.
Yeah. And who knows who they might go on to speak. Like the first girl has spoken to her mum and her sisters about it, and the second lady, she has a daughter in her early 20s, so she's talking about it. So from the lady that spoke to me, who then I've spoken to somebody else, and and I put things up on my Facebook page, especially in June. I'll share all that stuff that comes up on Lipoedema Australia, and just get the message out there that it is a thing and it is real. And there's, I say on my Facebook page every June, look at the women in your life, look at their wrists and look at their thighs, because that was the big thing for me. I still have tiny little wrists. I always have to get an extra hole in my watch band because my wrist is so small. But my thighs are massive, and I could never understand how you could have wrists this small and thighs this big in the same body. Because surely if I'm just fat, then my wrists and my hands, everything would be fat. But, you can feel the bones in the back of my hand. But my thighs are massive. So how is that the same body? So I struggled with that for decades before I learned that there was a thing called lipoedema.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and I reckon so many of the Lipoedema community listening to this will feel the same way that you felt. That so many questions, and once they get a diagnosis, everything just pieces together very slowly, and you think, oh, that's the reason for that, and that's the reason for that. It's fascinating how it all comes together once you get that diagnosis. Okay, so we are coming to the end of our episode.
So soon.
And one thing, I know we could talk about people's journeys for hours, but there's one question that Shell and I really like to ask all of our guests, because this is such an emotional roller coaster and a mental game, and it's long term. As we know, there is currently no cure for lipedema, and so we are on that conservative management journey for the rest of our lives. So if you could go back and give your youngest self a talk, what would you tell her?
It's not you. Look after yourself. Don't be. Do the best you can. It'll be okay. I think, yeah. I think that sums up.
So beautiful.
Yeah. And don't be scared to ask for help. Yeah. And don't be scared to ask for help. Yeah.
I love that. That's such a nice message. I would have loved someone to say that to me when I was a young girl as well. How powerful that would be to have those messages in your head when you're young and confused.
Yeah, especially when you're bombarded with Dolly magazine and Elle Macpherson and all of those other stereotypes of the 80s and 90s, which were not pleasant.
No, that's right. I often talk on this show. It always sort of comes up when I'm talking about my journey about, in the 90s, particularly that heroin chic fashion vibe, just not conducive to our bodies and how we just lived in that world where our bodies weren't acceptable. What a terrible place to be in.
And you have people like Kate Moss, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. And I'm like, well, I'd love to let you know about that, love, but yeah, here I am.
Yeah, what does skinny actually taste like? I don't know.
Yeah, let us know,
mate. Diet Coke and sadness, maybe.
Yeah. Whereas, bring me the Celeste Barbers of the world, thanks.
Oh, yes. There are so many women out there now who are doing their thing, and I'm so glad that there is, it's going to be a slow push, but there is a push happening there, just real women out there just doing their thing. And I think that's we've all sort of held back from doing things in our lives because we're like, oh, we don't fit the mold. And so, yeah, Celeste Barber, go girl.
Yeah. Especially her early stuff. It's just brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, she is a cracker. All right. Thank you so much, Jedda, for taking the time to chat with us tonight. I love hearing other women's stories because even though we have this common thread, we all are walking a completely different path and we're so individual. And I just love hearing the different takes and the different journeys and the different things we're doing to manage this condition. It empowers me even more just listening to more stories. So I'm hoping that's what's happening with our audience as well. The more different stories they hear, the more different people they can resonate with, and that's our aim.
You go, girls. I love it.
Thank you, Jedda.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, Jedda.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Lipoedema podcast. Lipoedema and its symptoms vary from individual to individual. The opinions and advice voiced on this podcast are of a personal nature and used for educational purposes.
Please take away from this podcast what resonates with you, and please see your GP or preferred specialist for diagnosis and healthcare. We are Shelley and Tiana from the Lipoedema podcast. Until our next episode, bye for now.